listening to For Change Be Bold podcast, the show that shows you how to start choosing you. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Today, I have my guest joining today, Rael Bricker. Hi, Rael.
Hey, Anakai, how are you?
I am doing great. How about you?
Oh, fantastic! We're coming to you from the future.
Yeah.
'Cause it is Thursday. Well, it is morning here, and you're in the evening there. So
Yeah.
so we'll tell you what the future looks like.
Yeah, we'll definitely tell you. So how is it since it's Thursday? What's going to happen today?
Uh, no, where we are. It's a great sunshiny day today in Perth, Western Australia. What we call the smallest capital city. It's 2 million people on the west coast of Australia.
Nice. And you were born and raised in Australia, right?
I was born in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I started my first businesses in South Africa. I reverse listed those in 1996 and moved to Australia in 1999 and ended up starting another business in 2001. So, so lived here for 22 years now.
Yeah, 22 years. So how was it? Have you been back to Africa? Have you been back to South Africa?
I have, and it's interesting. So, I talk to a lot of, say, Americans who live here in Australia, right? A very good friend of ours is from Houston. And every time she goes back, she refers to Houston as home, even though she's been here 10 or 12 years. She's an Australian citizen as well. But her and I had a long discussion about it. And she said, every time she goes to Houston, it hasn't changed. It's exactly the Houston that she grew up with, right? Mm-hmm. When I go back to Johannesburg, which is where I grew up, it has changed so dramatically that it isn't the place I grew up anymore.
Yeah.
And so for me, this is home. 22 years later, I still visit. I have cousins there. My immediate family, my mother and sister, don't live there. They actually live in North America. But the truth of it is that it's not the place I grew up, and so therefore now Australia is home.
Is home to you. Yeah. I completely understand what you mean. I moved from Jamaica and I'm living here. So when I go back, it's so much changes that you're like, I feel lost.
Do you feel like a tourist in your hometown? The town you grew up, you feel like a tourist. And as soon as I felt like a tourist, it was no longer home because I was a tourist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we want you to share some more about your background. You're sharing a little bit with us just now, okay. But can you give us some more details about your background, your company? I know that you're coming from 6 feet under.
6,000 feet.
6,000 feet under. There we go. Correction. 6,000 feet under. And how did you end up going into being a speaker, motivational speaker? So share some more about that.
Okay, so I grew up in a household where finance was very tight growing up. And when I finished school, I did well at school. I had to get a scholarship to go to university. There was no way that my parents could afford it. And the student loan system didn't really exist in South Africa.
Yeah.
So the only way I could get to university was to get a scholarship. I got one from Anglo American, which was at the time the largest mining house in South Africa and one of the largest in the world. And as part of the scholarship, I had to work for them for 2 years after graduation. And I joke with people today, I had this T-shirt that we had in first year engineering that said, 6 months ago, I couldn't spell engineer, now I are one. And that was exactly me. I went through this engineering degree because my teachers at school said you're good at maths and science without really understanding what an engineer did. And I ended up as an engineer on the mines. And I was working predominantly 6,000 foot underground and spent 19 months doing that. The lesson I share with lots of entrepreneurs today is I was probably too young, too arrogant, and too full of myself to really appreciate the lessons at that age. Like at the age of 22, I was told by the other 3 engineers, we're all going home for Christmas, you're it, and you've got 5,500 staff to look after for the next month. And
Wow.
I went, okay, no problem. I can deal with that. So I've always been confident enough to deal with it. But the
Mhm.
lessons I learned, I only internalized when I was 30. Because I was going, oh my God, I hate this mine. I hate working here. I want to get back to the big smoke and back to Johannesburg or Cape Town. I didn't want to be in this little mining town 200 kilometers from Johannesburg.
Yes.
When I was 30 and I started other businesses and I had my own real staff, then I realized, oh, hang on a second, those were amazing lessons I learned. So I worked underground. I then worked at Anglo American head office, left them to do an MBA. And at the same time, I was doing a master's in engineering. I'm just kind of crazy. I did 2 masters at the same time for whatever stupid reason that was. It caused my wife and I, we weren't married yet, to break up 8 times.
Oh no.
But we still got married. We got married on an amazing day in South African history, not because it was my wedding, although I'd like to think so. But we got married at 4 p.m. on the 11th of February, 1990. And at 4 p.m. on the 11th of February, 1990, Nelson Mandela was released from jail.
Oh
So at the
nice.
exact time of our wedding was when Mandela walked free from jail. So it's a great day, and I can never forget. And every year on Facebook or LinkedIn, I always put a tribute to Nelson Mandela on my wedding anniversary. So I comment on how happy I am still married, but I also comment on the significance of
The
the day.
significance. Yeah.
Anyway, but I needed to explain the Mandela thing because there was at a time in South Africa where there was an emergent hunger for education. We didn't really understand that, but we kind of knew it. And there were these students. So we started an education business through a variety of reasons in South Africa. And I had all these students coming to me, clutching their year 12, their high school graduation certificates, which, to be honest, weren't worth the paper they were written on. They had aggregate marks of 35%, 35% aggregate, but they'd been given a certificate to say they'd finished school.
Yeah.
And they wanted to study. And so we were taking these students through a junior college. We started what the American equivalent would be sort of a junior college. It was called a diploma, not a degree, but it was the same idea of the equivalency.
Yes.
And that grew from 20 students in 1990 to 4,000 students by 1996 over 6 campuses. So I thankfully we were in the right place at the right time, but we also did a lot of good things. And those are in my book of how we actually grew the business. We sold out, or we reverse listed into a company. I had a year's contract with that company. We did 9 acquisitions for them over that period. I finished my contract and I left, went into venture capital. So because we're doing all these acquisitions, went into venture capital, went into buying and selling businesses, which is pretty cool, actually. With someone else's money, it's even better. Then I left Australia, came to Australia, ended up in a venture fund as well, listed that on the stock exchange here. So raised 20 million, listed that on the stock exchange here. So had some really cool experience. They wanted me to move from Perth to Sydney, which in the American context is moving from LA to New York. It's that distance, okay? And it's almost like moving from a town like San Diego, like the San Diego lifestyle to the New York lifestyle, completely different.
Different, yeah.
And I went, nah, my kids actually enjoy living in Perth. I'm going to stay in Perth. Went out on my own and started a finance business because people wanted to raise finance. And then they said, great, can you do our home loan? And I went, okay, I can do a home loan. I don't know how to do it, but I'll find out. And start a home loan business, which I still own today. And that's done 3 billion in mortgages over those 20 years. So that's the 7 years ago. 7 years ago, I had 2 cardiac stents. I was training for a marathon after doing triathlons. And that also made me focus on what I want to do in my life.
Yeah.
My mortgage business was built by me being on stage. So you asked the question, how did I get to be a professional speaker? I had spoken for the last 10 or 12 years before that on stage with people about retiring, building property portfolios, being self-sufficient, all those things. And of the 3 billion in mortgages we've done, about 1 billion was done by me off stage. So I knew that I could speak. I knew that I could stand on stage and present.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, I was asked by the industry to say, can you come and talk about how to build a business? Nothing to do with mortgages. How did you build your mortgage business? And I went, that was cool. And I got on the plane and started writing a book. And I went, that's what I want to do. I was 51. I went, this is my midlife crisis. I'm going to change careers.
Mm-hmm.
And by 2019, I became a certified speaking professional. And there are only about 1,500 worldwide, about 1,300 in the US and about 200 outside of the US. And and today I'm president of Professional Speakers Australia in Western Australia. And I spend my life, pre-COVID, I used to spend my life 4 to 5 months a year traveling. I haven't done much traveling over the last 18 months, but that's how I end up here as a professional. I still own the financial services business. Clients still want to talk to me because of my knowledge and my relationships, and that's okay. I'm happy to do that, but I also, I guess, really, I'm passionate about education and seeing the lights come on in entrepreneurs' eyes. And I run 4-month academies down to, keynotes to 4-month courses. And I actually get much more satisfaction out of the 4 months because I see the lights come on in people's eyes. I actually see the engagement. I see we've got it and we're making real change. You do an hour keynote, it's fantastic. You're 1,000 people in the audience. They give you a standing ovation. They go, wow. But then have you made any real impact? Not really. So that's the story of how I got there. Sorry, it's been a long journey. It's had to take from 6,000 foot all the way up to the surface.
That's a good journey right there. Thanks for sharing. I actually so happy that you spoke about helping the teaching part of it. That's the part that you enjoy, because as you said, a one-day conference you can do that, and that's great. But when you can see the stages of your students and how they can transition from one level to the next, that's where you get the enjoyment out of it. And I think that's like the greatest for any teacher in whatever profession you're in. Once you can see that they have implemented what you have given unto them, that's the greatest feeling that you can get.
Absolutely. And it's great. Part of what I enjoyed about being on stage and talking to people about retirement and property was if I could count the number of people who are now property millionaires because I helped them get there.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the same token, that's what made me happy in my finance business, not because I was making money out of it. Yes, that was important because it allowed me a certain lifestyle.
Exactly.
Let's not kid ourselves. You need to generate revenue in a business, otherwise your business goes bust. But the truth of it was, I would say to people, I don't care if, I have a number of properties in a portfolio, but I'd say to clients, well, you've got 10 times more properties than me. I don't care because I'm helping you get better. And by helping you get better is making me better.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is great. That is great. So we're going to go into the ethical crossroad. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to also talk about, some important stages of starting and growing your business. We're going to get into that. The first thing I want to throw at you, or the first question that I want to pose to you is, which is more important, creativity or to be efficient?
I actually think creativity, and I'll explain why. Part of my book is titled Dive In, Lessons Learned Since Business School, but we only came up with that title about 3 weeks before we published. Okay. For the time long before that, it had been called Give Up Control to Gain Control. Okay. Bit of a cryptic title, but that explains the difference between the creativity and the efficiency, because the entrepreneur in a business, the person who's the passion in a business, they are probably best, unless they're really just a unique entrepreneur, but they are probably best at out there selling and generating revenue because they can talk with passion and excitement and really tell the clients, the potential clients, what it's about. But the problem with entrepreneurs, you start a business, you don't have any money, so you do that, and then you rush off at night to do the accounting and the finance and the admin and all that kind of stuff. That's the efficiency part of the business. But truly, to make yourself the the most effective person in that business, the entrepreneur or the person with a passion, should be out there being creative, being the ideas person, being the salesperson. So I always say, make yourself, that's what the give up control is. Give up control of the $10 an hour admin and take control of the $500 an hour revenue. Because if you're doing that, you can pay people the $10 an hour to do the admin. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the whole growth of the virtual assistant market over the last few years, unfortunately, has outsourced a lot of local onshore jobs to offshore, which is a problem because people are looking for work onshore.
Yeah.
But also, it's created a whole industry in countries that need the revenue, like the Philippines, etc., where people desperately need an income and people are outsourcing work to them. So it's exactly that. It's about the creativity is the person with the passion driving the business. The efficiency, you can actually pay people to do that.
I like that. What would be one thing that you could share with someone who might be thinking, yes, I want to be, creative in my business, but looking at the fact that I don't have the funds to find someone to, be the social media, marketer for my company, or I don't know, what could you share with someone to say, hey, you can maybe work this way and become more creative?
Well, let me go. So again, one of the chapters in the book does exactly that. It talks about, I never ask staff to do anything that I wouldn't do. Doesn't mean I can do stuff efficiently or effectively, but can I post a post on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook, or maybe not TikTok because I haven't done any of those, but yes, but that's on those three media, right?
Yeah.
Can I do it? Yes. Am I really good at it? Probably not. There are people better than me.
Mm-hmm.
But if I've done it and I've seen the level of engagement that I'm getting, then I can go and we talk about outsourcing. I mean, I was looking the other day, helping a client that I'm working with who wants to outsource that. And you can outsource social media to people in the Philippines, and I'm not pushing that, but from a revenue, from a cost base at $500 US a month. Okay. So if you think about it, if you are focused as the entrepreneur on generating one more sale of $500, you're paying for the $500 assistant full time to do that. Now that's the trade-off. Yes, we may not have the money. So yes, you have to do it yourself. But you have to do it just with yourself with one eye on the ball that says, as soon as and why do I say you have to do it yourself? Because you never want to be held over a barrel by any staff member, by any team member of yours that says, you don't know how to do this, so you have to pay me more money now because I'm the specialist, right? And I know that's a harsh statement. And if you build a team correctly and create the right culture, you don't get that. But I've seen lots of toxic cultures where employees think they can hold the company over a barrel because they're the specialist. Okay.
Yeah.
And so how would you do it? Absolutely. As an entrepreneur, I still see entrepreneurs who think they're corporate and they go, oh, it's 5:00. It's time for a beer now. And I'm going, that's not the way entrepreneurs work. I'm still, after 30 plus years as an entrepreneur, I will still go on a Sunday morning out for coffee, take my laptop, sit in a coffee shop and catch up on 2 days worth of emails. Why? Because I'm mad about work, because it's part of my routine. I'll take myself out of my work environment to do something different, but I'll do that. And so that's the mindset shift. When someone leaves the corporate and goes, I'm going to be this, wild out there entrepreneur. Look how much money I can make. Look how successful. There's also a mindset shift. The mindset shift is, for the first 6 months, I'm going to have to do everything. Unless you've got money raised and you can afford to employ team members straight away, but most people don't. And so the truth of it is you have to know how to do everything reasonably well. It's the same way I did my MBA. Not my MBA. When I did my MBA, I wanted to know lots of little things about business. I knew I was never going to be a corporate manager. but I wanted to know lots of little things about business so that when I ran my own businesses,
Yeah,
I
an
knew
idea.
lots of little things. I had to employ an HR person when I had 160 staff in my education business in South Africa. But I knew the basics of HR from my MBA. That's what the entrepreneur has to do, is not say, I'm just this mad creative. They have to actually, so a lot of the work I do is in behavioral styles, right? And I talk about people, like how you communicate with people who different behavioral styles to you. And that's why behind me on the shelves, you'll see all these colored things, including colored glasses back there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the colored glasses back there are exactly that. You have those because you have to look at people through their own color lenses. And so sometimes you have to change your own behavior. So I'm very much out there. I'm what's called a yellow red in my color coding of behaviors. But in my finance business, I have to be blue sometimes. I have to be detail oriented.
Yeah.
And so I change mindset to detail. It's not a comfortable space. And
Mm-mm.
there's an old saying that says you've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You've heard that? Being comfortable with being uncomfortable is exactly what an entrepreneur has to do. You have to
Exactly.
do the things that you're uncomfortable with, and then you can outsource them.
I like that. Yes, you have to be very much uncomfortable with some of the things that you're going to do because it's not going to be easy all the time. What's one of the hardest decisions you've ever made?
Um, it's probably in terms of, I mean, one of the hardest decisions as an owner, business manager is getting rid of people. Okay.
Yeah.
And I say that, and that, that's a human resources nightmare when I say getting rid of people. But whether it's downsizing, redundancy, or it is having to fire somebody for an ethical problem, and having done both. Okay, so there was a time when the property market in Australia was pretty flat, and my general manager and I looked at it and went, we don't need this level of staffing. I mean,
Yeah.
the bizarre thing is I had to make someone redundant and 4 months later call them and go, we need you back. Okay. But at the time, we didn't see a turnaround in the market. And that was a really hard, uncomfortable decision. The person's well integrated back into the team now, and I'm happy with that.
Nice.
So that was challenging because I'm just generally this Mr. Nice guy. Um, Many years ago, I drew a line in the sand, an ethical line in the sand in the finance business. And I said, as a broker, and I had 17 or 18 brokers working for me at the time, I said to them, I need to see your notes where you justify that, okay, I've been out to see Anakai, and I think the best loan for Anakai is ABC Bank over here. And I said, that's okay, but I want to see 3 more lines in there that says, because
Mhm.
I've chosen this bank because body, whatever the story is, right?
Yeah.
And I had a particular broker who thought he was being clever. And he wrote, because I get paid the highest commission for getting the loan there.
Wow.
Right. And that just broke my ethical line. And I just went to him and I said, you've actually put it in writing. If you'd come to me and said, look, Rael, I have an ethical problem. I have this bank and this bank. They're both the same for the client, but this one pays me more than this. I would have said, like, let's do the analysis. And truly, if they're identical products, but you can get paid more, that's okay.
Yeah.
But in this case, he'd actually put them into a worse product so he could get paid more.
More. Yeah.
So, I had to go through the whole disciplinary process, human resources, disciplinary process, etc., have full records, have other people in the interviews with me. And so much so that he never got another job in the industry because I actually reported him to the Ethics Commission because I just thought that was, as a fellow, now I'm a fellow of the mortgage industry. I just felt we didn't need people like that in the industry who made the wrong decisions for their clients.
Yeah. And I mean, as you mentioned that, like, what's one thing you could share with an entrepreneur who is starting out right now about, the ethical part of it? Because we're talking about the ethical crossroads. Yeah. Like, I mean, yes, that was unethical for that worker, but what are some other unethical behaviors you've seen in the past where you're like, no?
So the biggest challenge in ethics is defining the boundaries and defining that line in the sand that you don't want people to cross. Now, so one of the things we've always brought in here is that the truth is king. Now that sounds simple. You'd expect every company to have that,
Yeah.
but the natural tendency, and I'll use the financial services business, the natural tendency for people is to go, oh, I forgot to send that file to the bank yesterday, so I'll just tell the client that the bank are running 5 days late. Okay. Well, no, stand up and own it. Has always been my philosophy. Turn around to the client and go, I really apologize. I know we've got time on our hands, or we don't have time, whatever the situation is. But I forgot to send it yesterday. I'm sending it off today, so we expect an answer in 3 days.
Yeah.
But just be open and honest, because otherwise it's a web of lies, and then a little lie leads to a bigger lie and a bigger lie, and that's a problem. So we had this thing about being totally open. Now, so when one of the lessons I teach my staff is, if I have to phone a client with bad news, right? And bad news is bad for them and me, because bad news is generally, oh, sorry, you're not going to get your loan. That's bad news for them because they're passionate about buying a property.
Yeah.
The bad news for me is I don't get paid either. So there's a mutual, understanding here.
Exactly.
But I would stand within the open plan area, right? I would go and stand or sit in the main working area and make the call to the client. And before I did that, I'd tell all the other staff to stop doing what they're doing and come and stand. I mean, I've got a very experienced staff now. I don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But in the early days, I would get them all to stand around me and be quiet. And then they would hear how I spoke to the client, how I explained to the client why they never got their loan, and potentially giving them alternative options or whatever the case may be. But I thought it was a great learning experience. And that's part of that ethical, cultural background that and so ethics and culture are cornerstones of business. All right. If you don't have the ethics and the culture right, the business will collapse. I always use the cornerstones, the foundation stones. If you're building a house and you don't put the right foundations in, and in any business, ethics and culture. Now, so you've got listeners going, well, that's great. I'm a solopreneur. How do I define the culture? Well, you've got to think about it in terms of what happens when you employ your first staff member.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell them to do? How do you interact with them? Someone I knew in the finance industry used to refer to his team members as Muppets. Now, just because he had no respect for his own team.
Yeah.
One of my key staff celebrated a 10th anniversary this week. Yeah, 10th anniversary at the office, okay? And yet his staff had an average tenure of 6 months. And it just was about attitude. It was about how you dealt with people, that culture and the ethics that you created. One of the things I tell people on stage, when I'm standing on stage, is to take their left hand and put it on their right shoulder, and take their right hand and put it on their left shoulder, and embrace the intersection that we're at. Embrace the intersection of humanity and technology, because that intersection that we're at now creates lots of ethical dilemmas. There's so much on YouTube. There's so much false information, fake news, everything else out there. You've got to get to this intersection and make the decision to go on the right path.
Yes, indeed. I know there's so many things out there that can sway you and turn you to do, the wrong things, but you have to, stay on the right path.
Yeah.
What's one lesson you've learned from a mistake that you have made?
So the two big lessons. One was when I was 14 and I thought I could conquer the world. Well, I've always thought that, but I've got better as I've got older.
Yeah.
But I worked in an electronics shop. It was my very first job. And a person came in to buy a car radio. Now, for anyone probably under the age of 40 now, they wouldn't understand why people buy car radios, because all cars have them fitted already. But, this is, 40 years ago, you actually fitted a car radio into the dashboard of a car. And this young lady sort of said, "Oh, how do I do this? How do I fit this in? It's a nice radio, but..." And I said, "Don't worry, come over to my house this afternoon and I'll fit it for you." It actually cost me money because I ended up damaging a car and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
But I learned a lesson there to you that I knew even at that age. I was in year 10 at school, probably, out of 12 years, that whatever I did in life had to involve my brain and not my hands. Now, I became an engineer, but engineers are still brain thinking rather than, using their hands. I love woodwork and I love creating things, but am I a craftsman? Not at all. But I learned early on that any business I do has to involve my brain. So, you have to learn. And so the lesson extended is use your skills. Use what you're good at. Don't try and be somebody else.
Yeah.
That guy down the road is a good painter. Therefore, I'm going to paint pictures and sell them as masterpieces. Doesn't work. Okay. Use the skills. We could get into the religious, philosophical that you've been given, and right. It's not that, because you develop skills in life, but it's about just using the skills you have. That's the one. The second thing is find your lane sometimes. So after I left the venture fund, when I was starting the financial services business, a friend called me and said he's found this amazing product from Germany, which was a storage system for CDs and DVDs. And, going back now 20 years, that was the primary medium we used to back up computers. We never had hard drives or external hard drives that were too expensive.
Yeah.
And I thought this was amazing. I literally bought a plane ticket, jumped on a plane to Germany, went to the factory, was amazed by this product, bought $5,000 worth of stock and shipped it back with me to Australia. And then I thought, geez, this is amazing. I need to go out and sell. So I went out and stupidly ordered $80,000, a container load of stock to arrive in Perth about 2 months later. And then I started trying to sell, and I realized that I was useless at selling product.
You're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there were a few reasons. One is that the big chains, who, the office supply chains, only wanted to deal with people who had 100 products and could deliver into every store. Mm-hmm. I had one product range, so I was useless.
It was, yeah.
And so I ended up giving that $80,000 worth of stock to a friend of mine who was down and out, couldn't get a job. He went and sold them to a $2 store and got $5,000 for $80,000 worth of stock. And at least it kept him and his family in food for another couple months. But that was after paying warehousing and everything for about 4 years. So I also realized that in my lane, and this was after being in South Africa and selling education and getting all these students into the business, I suddenly realized my lane was services, not products.
Yeah.
That I needed to sell the intangible, not the physical. And so, it's about finding your lane as well. Not saying don't change lanes later on, but, as an entrepreneur, we mustn't be shiny object syndrome. Grab this, grab this, grab this. You do have to have a lane. And if that lane's not working, then change lanes. Yeah. But find what you're good at. Get to understand your core, and my core is selling services.
Exactly. You got to find what you're good at. And I think that's one thing that I have been realizing over the past months is just finding what I'm good at. I mean, there's so many things that I could be doing, but what is it that I'm good at? What is going to make me, stand out? And it's not just doing every single thing you see other people are doing, because they're doing it and getting the success out of it. That doesn't mean I'm going to try it and get the success like they are doing it. It's because that's their lane, that's what they're good at. So, we each have to find what we're good at too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what makes you unique,
Yeah.
When I was doing a lot of talking on finance, and I'd stand up at night at 9 o'clock and say to people, how is it that 9 o'clock I can be standing up here with all this energy and excitement about finance, which is boring? Yeah. Finance is a boring topic. How do I make it exciting at 9 o'clock at night? And I said, quite simply, because every person in this room that I deal with has a different story, a different background. I'm not going to be like any of you, but I'm going to give you the best bit of me every time we talk. And so I knew what my niche was, was explaining finance in a way that the average person could understand it, and it applied to each one of their circumstances. So absolutely, it's finding what you're good at.
Mm-hmm. Find something that you're good at and work towards it and work on it. Work on improving what you're good at. You'll get better at it, and you'll find, as you said, that at 9 o'clock you're pumped and you're energized. Once you find something that you're good at, you're gonna be pumped no matter what time it is. You're gonna be energized no matter what time it is to share and to talk about it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how do you determine or evaluate success?
I mean, I think success has got nothing to do with the bank account. I mean, if your bank account's empty, yeah, maybe it's a problem, okay? But it's not really about how much money in the bank, how many properties, how many Rolex watches you have. It's actually got very little to do with that. And in fact, probably the people with, a lot of the biggest challenges are those who've been financially successful, but not successful in life. And I think if your financial success allows you to be successful in life, I look at my 3 kids and I look at the amazing kids, and everyone thinks the kids are amazing, but okay. But I think my kids are amazing. They're not kids anymore. My oldest is almost 28 and my youngest is 17. But I see the individuals, the thinking individuals they've become. I have 2 master's degrees. My 2 older kids are both doing masters at the moment in different countries. So, they've become world travelers. They've become understanders of the world. They become deep classical thinkers, whilst being totally out there personalities. And so for me, that's success, that I've given them enough support and understanding to create that. And could I have done that if I was working 25 hours a day out of 24, trying to put bread on the table? Well, that was what we did for a long time. And, starting businesses, it's no easy road.
Yeah.
But I think that they understood what we were doing. But as an entrepreneur, what did I find? How did I find my success? The ability, when there's an assembly at the school or a concert at the school, to be able to go to my staff, sorry guys, I'm going to the school for 2 hours to listen to the assembly. Because I think that is part of that. That was what made my kids successful, and that's what made me successful. So I think the measure of my success is my happiness, my kids, my family, and that came from being successful in business.
Yeah.
But I could have, it's not my personality to have been in a job as a CEO of a major corporation. I get too frustrated. So, but that's how I define success.
That's how you define success. Nice. I mean, the flexibility that you have, because you're running your own business too, is the fact that you're able to be around your kids more often, or you're able to go to events for them. So I mean, running your own business, that's the perks, or I should say, that's one of the kind of values that you get when you run your own
boss. It's being your own boss and being the boss of your own time. I think that's the more important part of that is you gain control of your own time. So, you go, well, I could be out there prospecting and trying to earn another $500, or I could be out there watching my kids who are not great athletes, or my son's pretty good, but my daughters are not great athletes. But going to watch them run school races was more important than going out there and prospecting for another client.
Yeah. And then I want to ask you one more thing before we end the beautiful conversation that we're having, because it's such an amazing conversation right now. So we are on the topic of ethical crossroads. And I know many times when it comes on to, prospecting a client or reaching a client, many times we could, say something that might not be 100% correct, but because we want that client to be on board with us, we go ahead and we might say, hey, if you do this, you might get a $200 in sale or something like that. Is there would you say that that's okay? And let me go in deeper. So, for example, I'm communicating with you, and I'm like, Rael, if you join our company or if you do services with us, we know that you're gonna start making $200 right away. But for a fact that might not happen because it's all about the outcome. I mean, the work that the person put in. Do you think that is unethical, or you think that is also ethical to go with?
No, not at all. I have a lot of problem with I mean, I get pictures on a daily, weekly, monthly basis of, yeah, follow this system and we'll get you 4 billion clients and blah, 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 but just pay us, $597 for the privilege, okay? Or whatever it may be. I mean, I think honesty and truth are the keys. I mean, there are, just to digress on ethics for a second, if you think about the problem of a doctor, and I'll use that as a doctor who says, I refuse to have anything to do with abortion, right? Fair enough. That's their ethical line. But as a doctor, they've also taken an oath to save life, okay? Now, they're working in the emergency department. A heavily pregnant woman comes in, and they have two choices. They can perform an abortion, a late-term abortion, but if they don't, the patient is most likely to die. The mother is most likely to die. But ethically and morally, what are they compelled to do? We could have a whole ethical discussion about that.
Yeah.
But they've drawn their own line in the sand that said, that's what I'm not going to do that. Now, what happens if they go ahead and they do the abortion and save the mother's life? Has that changed where they are? No, it hasn't. It may have. They may turn around and go, well, maybe I don't need such a hard line on it. But that's a very extreme ethical question. So if we apply that to day-to-day business, like, yeah, come and join our team and you could earn $10,000 a month. And I remember this pitch very carefully when I started my finance business. I had people pitching to join their group and, oh yeah, you can earn this. And I got to the fine print, you can earn this in 3 years' time. But they just left that statement out. So I think there are incredibly unethical people around there. Mm-hmm. Are those unethical people driven by money? Absolutely. Business colleagues of mine have a view that everyone is driven by money. And I was having a debate. So my area that I speak about a lot, you'll see the white sign behind me says culture. Is culture in organizations, okay? And I was debating with someone the other day, does culture have a value? Okay, simple question.
Yeah.
And what did they said, well, explain what you mean. So I said, if I'm saying to you, Anakai, right, here is company A that's going to pay you $200,000 a year, but it's got a toxic, horrible culture. You're going to come home every day and reach for the bourbon because you've had such a terrible day at the office. It's been so stressful.
Yeah.
This company is going to pay you $150,000, but they have a most amazing culture where you're going to come home totally energized at the end of the day. Is there a value to that culture to earn less, but change your lifestyle? Okay. And so those are the kind of things. So when, unfortunately, there are lots of ethical people who still believe that everyone in the world is driven by money. And, fish out there, dangle, oh, you're going to earn $10,000. Yeah. I mean, multi-level marketing schemes, how many of those are out there? Well, sorry, they're not called that anymore. They're called, I've gone blank for a second. Sorry, network marketing. Thank you. Yes, network marketing. And there are some network marketing organizations that are fantastic, that really do a good job, and people through the network really make a good living out of it.
They do, yeah.
But they also say that when you join network marketing, the first thing you lose is all your friends and family because you're trying to sell them your product,
yeah,
which I love as a story. But my ethical brain looks at network marketing in a broad nutshell and goes, if they are paying all these commissions out all the way down the line, what's the product really worth? If it's $100 product and they're paying out $70 in commission, surely the true intrinsic value of the product is $30. And so my question is, when people are marketing that, they're not thinking through it at that level and saying, what's the value that I'm adding? What value am I adding? That's why I love the finance business, because I was truly adding value to people. That's why I love being a speaker, because I can turn around and go, I added value to that person. I made that person do something. So in finance, they changed, they got a better interest rate, they bought a new property, whatever. In working with companies, in running masterminds, I run mastermind groups, and I look at the people in the mastermind, how they grow from the very first session where they sit there with their arm. I'm not talking, I'm not sharing, I'm an accountant, it's not my nature to do that.
I know this.
Yeah. Just like, putting my dark glasses on so you can't see my eyes. To 6 months later, when anyone else in the group says, oh, look, I'm having this problem with XYZ, they're the first one to say, why don't we look at it like this, or let's share something, whatever. And so that's progress. That's what you're doing. Okay. So that to me is adding value to people. When people are conceptually thinking that everyone's driven by money, not adding value and not doing them a good service. And so I have an ethical problem with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. We got to be straightforward and be 100% honest. I always say, listen, your clients that you're trying to attract, they come to you because they want someone to listen to them, not only help them, but listen to their needs and help them. And if you just do what you want to do in the moment because you want to make money, you're not gaining clients. That's just a one person coming to shop and leave. You want to retain those clients and you want to keep them. And the best way to retain and to keep the clients is to listen to what they want and help them the best of your ability.
Yeah, it's to find their pain points. And unfortunately, a lot of people who are selling unethically, or as you said, convincing somebody to join their organization on the promise of doing something in the future, but mainly just to access their database or access their energy, and then they're going to leave because they're never going to make it. There's a huge problem with that. They are picking one pain point, and they, unfortunately, go to any. You live in Vegas.
Yeah.
Go to any of the casinos, and as much as they drive the economy of Vegas and Atlantic City and a few others, if you ever walk through the casino and see the number of people, and you look at them and say, they shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
They don't look like they've got 2 cents to rub together.
Exactly.
But that's what they're doing. And I'm not calling it a moral complaint about the casinos. I have no problem. I enjoy going down the strip in Vegas and going to the different casinos, but I'm much more controlled. But it's exactly the same thing. What if the casinos sold to that person who's down and out the promise of hitting the jackpot and winning the money and changing their life? It happens. It's exactly the same ethical dilemma when you say to somebody, "Oh, come and join our organization because you can earn $10,000 a month, or 20, or get the big bonus and go to Jamaica, go to Jamaica on holiday, on our incentive scheme, whatever it is."
Yeah.
That's the ethical problem. I mean, it's a whole debate about the casino industry and what message they're putting out there of, the fact that the house always wins is something they don't tell you.
Exactly. So, Rael, before you go, I want you to share with us one positive quote or one positive, line or anything that you want to share, just to end, and then provide us with your website, any course or activities or any speaking engagement that you have coming up. I know you were supposed to be in Vegas in July, but let us know when you're coming to Vegas.
Oh, I will do that. So, a word of advice: the key to successful business, and there's lots of them, and I will give to all your listeners at the end a free copy of my book, a PDF version that they can download. Um, okay, so, and there's lots of these types of tips in the book. But one of them is never ask your staff to do anything that you wouldn't do. Okay. And it sounds simple and trivial. And in the day-to-day office environment, you'd say that's okay. But I'll tell you a little background story. The men's toilets in my offices, men's toilets never smell that good. Okay. Right. And so I went in there one day and I said, God, this smells awful. How can I send clients who come in to visit our office into these toilets?
Yeah.
So I went to my PA and I said, can you find out where those nice smelly things that you find in public toilets or hotel toilets, whatever, that they put in the urinals and it takes away the smell? Can you find them for me and get some ordered? So they arrived the next day. I then took out a box and I asked her to order a box of rubber gloves at the same time.
Yeah.
And I took the box of rubber gloves and I called all the men in the office. And I said, here is a box of rubber gloves and here is a whole bucket of these things that will make our toilets smell a whole lot better. And I put on a rubber glove and I took a handful of these and I walked into the toilets and I put them in. That was 12 years ago. I've never had to do it again.
Yeah.
Because I showed the staff that I was prepared to do it. And now I don't even have to remind them. One of the guys will walk in and go, doesn't smell that good. He'll go get the gloves, get the blocks, put them in. I've never had to do it again. And so it's a simple thing like that. It makes you human as a boss.
Mm-hmm.
That makes the staff then understand you and buy into your journey that you're taking them on.
Yeah.
So that's the one piece of advice is never ask your staff to do anything you wouldn't do. So I will walk into the office. One of them will offer me a cup of coffee in the morning. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when I'm the last one here, or one of them's in a meeting with clients, I will go and offer their clients coffee and go and make it, because I think that's what you have to do as a culture. Right. How to get a hold of me? railbricker.com is my website. Not that complicated. www.railbricker.com or excellencepodcast.com, both of those. And a free gift for your listeners is to go to railbricker.com/free book. It isn't on the main menu, so you have to know the URL. It's railbricker.com/free book. And there is a downloadable copy of my PDF of my book called Dive In, Lessons Learned Since Business School, published in 2018. And it's the story of my entrepreneurial journey and all the things I learned and applied in my businesses.
Thank you so much.
Speaking engagements and that, there are a lot of those that come out. A lot of them are individual corporates, so they don't get publicized. Like I talk for corporates, I don't publicize them. Mm-hmm. But there's YouTube videos of a lot of the stuff I talk about on culture, on colors, on behavioral styles. There's a lot of video material on my website. And I'm always happy to take emails or LinkedIn requests. I'm not a snob. I always reply to LinkedIn requests and I always reply to emails.
Yes, he does. And fast. Thank you so much, Rael Bricker, for being a part of the podcast today and for sharing your background with us and for, just talking about ethical, crossroads with us. I think this was an enlightening conversation. And I think many of the audience who are listening and they are, business owners, they can take something away from this. And especially when it comes on to being ethical in their business. So thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you very much, Annika. It's been a great conversation. I love the flow and the ease of having a conversation and weaving different topics into a kind of complex idea.
Yeah, it is. But you made it easy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.